Certainly. Below is a rewritten, expanded version of the provided plot points from General Hospital, developed into a fully immersive and dramatic long-form article, aiming for around 10,000 characters, with a tight structure and intense emotional arcs. Whispers of vengeance and redemption. Port Charles spirals in the wake of Natalia's memorial. The streets of Port Charles rarely sleep, but even they seemed to hold their breath as the city prepared to mourn Natalia Ramirez. The woman who had walked the line between grace and steel had met an untimely end, and though her death was officially labeled an accident, no one truly believed that story, not in a town where every whispered secret carries the weight of a storm. As mourners gathered beneath the vaulted ceilings of the Corinthos Estate Chapel, the air grew taut, trembling with barely restrained emotion, grief, and suspicion. But no one was prepared for how the solemnity of a memorial would explode into chaos, exposing not only old wounds but revealing new fractures in the lives of those who had tried so hard to keep control. At the center of this emotional maelstrom was Sonny Corinthos, a man both feared and loved in equal measure. Rumors had already begun to spread, quiet at first, then louder, more insistent, that Natalia's death wasn't just a tragic turn of fate, but something orchestrated. The whispers gained traction when Marco Rios, Natalia's nephew, arrived in Port Charles days before the service, his eyes burning with rage, and his silence more damning than any accusation. Dressed in stark black, Marco stood at the back of the memorial, arms crossed, his gaze never once leaving Sonny, who sat stoically in the front pew beside Carly and Michael, the picture of composed sorrow. The memorial itself began with expected reverence, music soft and sorrowful, eulogies laced with admiration. But underneath every word was a current of tension, waiting for a break. That moment arrived when Marco took the podium. He didn't speak of Natalia's love of art, her loyalty, or her charitable work. He spoke of betrayal, of a life taken too soon, and of the shadows in which her murderer still thrived. All eyes turned toward Sonny. Alexis Davis rose to her feet before Marco could even finish. Her voice didn't shake as she stepped forward, arms slightly raised as if to protect her ex-lover from the rising tide of public fury. She had once known every corner of Sonny's soul, the light and the abyss. And though they had been estranged for years, Alexis still understood the man beneath the title of mob boss. Her defense wasn't loud, but it was cutting, pointing out the lack of evidence, the manipulation of grief for vengeance, and the danger of letting sorrow become a weapon. But the damage had already been done. The congregation erupted, half the crowd leaning toward Marco's outrage, others pulled by Alexis's plea for restraint. Carly sat frozen, her hand clenching the rosary she didn't believe in, her face a mask of devastation. She wasn't just mourning Natalia. She was mourning the stability of her world, already fractured by secrets, now crumbling further under the weight of loss and distrust. Later that evening, the chapel was silent and cold, its candles flickering as if haunted by the day's events. Anna Devane lingered in the corner, her heart heavier than she wanted to admit. As a former spy and current police commissioner, she had seen countless lives lost, but Natalia's death gnawed at her in a different way. It wasn't just the suddenness of it, it was the layers beneath, the tangled web that seemed to wrap around every key figure in town. Anna wasn't just suspicious. She was frightened. Seeking clarity, Anna retreated to the Metro Court and found Felicia Scorpio sitting alone in the bar, sipping coffee and watching the television on mute. Anna slid into the booth without a word, her presence enough to make Felicia set the mug down slowly. What followed was not an official debrief, but a confessional whispered between two women who had long since learned the difference between law and truth. Anna admitted that Natalia had reached out to her days before her death, wanting to meet in secret. Natalia had hinted she had discovered something explosive involving corporate espionage, a secret identity, and a ledger tied to Sidwell Industries. She hadn't said more, but she had been scared. Truly scared. And now she was dead. Felicia's hand trembled slightly as she picked up her cup again. She knew what fear looked like. They both did. And this fear wasn't personal, it was systemic. If what Natalia had uncovered was true, it could unravel more than a few lives. It could end careers. It could start a war. While the older generation whispered behind closed doors, in the chapel's side room a far more fragile confrontation was taking place. Emma Scorpio Drake, daughter of Robin and Patrick, had arrived late to the memorial, her eyes swollen from hours of crying alone. She had kept her distance through the ceremony, too ashamed to sit with her family, too guilty to speak. But when the chapel cleared out and the shadows deepened, Emma found herself unable to walk away. She sat on the edge of the altar and waited until the room was empty. Then she whispered her confession to no one but God and the ghosts. She had been with Natalia on the day she died. What had started as an innocent meeting, Emma hoping to talk to someone outside the family about her spiraling anxiety, had turned into something darker. Natalia had told her she suspected she was being followed, watched, her phone tapped. She begged Emma not to repeat what she said. She spoke of a name, Vaughn, someone she feared but couldn't prove was behind the surveillance. Emma didn't know what to say. She left her that night shaken but didn't tell anyone. Not her parents. Not Anna. Not even Spencer. And now, Emma couldn't forgive herself. Because Natalia was dead. And whatever truth she had carried died with her. That guilt was eating Emma alive. And it was only the beginning. Carly, meanwhile, sat in her kitchen long past midnight, untouched tea cooling in her hands. The house was quiet. Too quiet. Her grief didn't cry. It screamed in silence. Natalia had been more than a family friend. She had been Carly's anchor in the chaos, someone who understood the moral ambiguity of loving a man like Sonny, someone who didn't judge the choices Carly had made to survive. Now she was gone. And Sonny might have had something to do with it. Carly didn't know what to believe anymore. She had fought for Sonny more times than she could count, but the weight of the past, the lies, the violence, it was starting to feel like a wound that would never close. Her heart broke not just for Natalia, but for the version of herself who had once believed things could be simple. That love could be enough. Now, love was the very thing tearing her apart. In the days that followed, Port Charles didn't calm. It curdled. Secrets began leaking from behind doors. Michael started digging into Sidwell's business records. Dante reopened Natalia's file despite pressure from above. Ava Jerome sent a mysterious envelope to Anna marked "Confidential, Urgent." And somewhere deep in the city's underbelly, Vaughn made a call that would set the next domino in motion. Port Charles had lost a daughter. But it was about to lose something more, its illusions. Natalia's death wasn't the end. It was only the prologue. If you'd like to expand this further into connected arcs, such as Vaughn's exposure, or Emma becoming a central figure in the investigation, I can write a second part.